way is the right way, I might say. Nobody doing it better, y'all some lightweights. Malik Wright, up all day and all night, pushing all the buttons up to something till it's alright. He looking at it from all sides and angles, got a stripes on his body like he played for the Bengals. Oh man, there's no one discussing it. They came, they stayed, they either did it or done it. Man, I love it, cause all they ever do is win. So kick that, relax, the TWSN.
Thank you guys for joining us for another episode of the Sit Down Morning Show with Malik Wright. Go figure. I'm Malik Wright, joined by my co-host. We've got Daniel Alameda, not on the ones and twos today, but actually sitting on the couch. We got Jimmy on the ones and twos today, and we've got a jam-packed show, a lot of stuff to talk about, a lot of stuff to get into. But before we do us a favor. Give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, turn on post notifications so you guys don't miss when we go live or when we upload content from the TWSN studios. Let's jump right into it. Let's talk about the rookies, right? Let's talk about the rookie quarterbacks real quick. Just get your overall thoughts on how they're performing right now. I'll tell you what I think so far. I think Jayden Daniels has been the best. I think Jayden Daniels has been the best quarterback. I don't think it's even up for debate. We unfortunately haven't gotten to see the kid over in New England just yet, obviously. Caleb Williams is starting to put it together, I would say. Bo Nix is coming along, I would say. But Jayden Daniels is on a tier among himself right now. He's playing right now like I would say like a 5-year vet. That's how he's playing right now. He's playing like a guy that's comfortable in his own skin. He's comfortable where he is. He's comfortable in the player that he's comfortable in who he is as a player. And I think that this offense, Cliff Kingsbury, they're doing everything in their power to make that guy feel comfortable. Daniel, you're a person who, I really value your opinion when it comes to Jayden Daniels because you're one of the few people who've watched him, partly because you went to ASU. You watched him when he was at ASU to LSU to Commanders. Yeah. I started to say, I was trying to think of another like SU to put for the Commanders, but you've seen the maturation. You've seen what he's become. You've seen when you and me were talking about him offline. And I said, this guy, I don't even think he's NFL level at all. I saw him as a 5th round pick. Yeah. And the guy has just completely elevated his game time and time again. And he proved that not only the fluke that went, not the fluke win, but the amazing performance he had, the perfect performance he had against the Bengals wasn't a fluke. He repeated that, right? He repeated that. It wasn't as perfect, but it was still a great game for him this past Sunday. I want to get your thoughts on the overall quarterback report, but I want to start with your guy, Jayden Daniels.
Yeah, I think in the overall quarterbacks, Malik, this may be one of the greatest draft classes of all time when it comes to quarterbacks. And I truly believe that. I think this will be up there with the Burrow draft class, with the Ben Roethlisberger, Phillip Rivers draft class, with, I'm sure there's another one, with Elway or Marino or something before. But it's definitely, I think it'll be a top 3 draft class when it comes to quarterbacks. I think all these dudes are legit. And starting with Jayden Daniels, I think he's legit. And my biggest questions with him is going to come when teams start to figure him out later on, right? I'm talking in the following season. I'm talking even at the halfway point of this season, right? It's a long season. And something that, tends to happen with these quarterbacks is a lot of times they hit the rookie wall because they're so used to playing 10, 11, 12 games in college. And then you got to go play a 17-game season in the NFL plus a playoffs, which could potentially lead to 19, 20 games. And I think that Jayden Daniels right now, he's playing like a star. He's playing like a superstar. And the biggest difference from what people were saying about him, before the season to where he is now is he's not making mistakes. And that's something that people said, oh, well, he's going to, even I thought, right? Oh, this dude, no way he's going to be able to play clean football in the NFL. No way he's going to be able to be as good of a pocket passer as he was at LSU. And the dude is doing it. And he's doing it up against some great competition, Malik. He did it up against the Bengals. He did it up against the Browns defense, which is a top 10 unit. And the dude's not making mistakes. 2 interceptions so far this season. And when you look at the numbers may not be great, right? Okay, he doesn't have a ton of passing yards. He's passing, 200, 150 a game. And you can look at that and say, okay, well, maybe he's not playing as good. That's bullshit, respectfully. And you go look at his rushing stats is another thing that is helping out his team so much. This past game, there was something that, it was a rollout to the right. What happened was it was a 5-yard gain, and then immediately after, Jaden Daniels went to the head coach or looked at him and signaled something. He immediately saw it was the safety was dropping or, biting on him outside the pocket. So what did they do in the next play? They went outside, bootleg, same exact thing, except they had a go route. The safety dropped down, and what happened? Easy 50-yard touchdown pass dropped in the bucket. So all around, Malik, Jaden Daniels is a star. He is proving to be a star. What's going to happen next is, quite frankly, it's up to the Commanders organization. There is no doubt in my mind Jaden Daniels can be a successful NFL player. There's no doubt in my mind that he can lead teams to be a very good, this team to be a very good and very quality team. I think there's even a chance they win the division this year. So the question is going to be, can the Commanders surround him with enough talent? And I think they're fine right now, but it's going to be, hey, this upcoming offseason, can you go out and trade for another wide receiver to pair with Terry McLaurin? Can you go out and, add to the backfield with Brian Robinson, hopefully add another guy besides Austin Eckler? Can you continue to build the offensive line? Because I think if the Commanders can do that, we're discussing a team that can be perennial, NFC contenders, and especially perennial NFC East contenders, because you look at that division, it's always so up in the air. So I think Jaden Daniels is a star, and Jaden Daniels can potentially lead this team, I think, even to a playoff win this year. So that's what I like about Jaden Daniels. And
What about the other quarterbacks?
yeah, no, for sure. I'm a huge Bo Nix fan this year so far, to be honest with you. I see a lot of people trashing on Bo Nix, saying, well, he's a check down merchant. He's this and that. That's bullshit, respectfully. You got to go look at the film and what Bo Nix is doing. Bo Nix is putting on great film, to be honest. There's times where, yes, he's maybe a little inaccurate, but what's to be expected of him is he's stepping in right now as an NFL ready player, as an NFL caliber quarterback. The concern I have with him is what's his upside, right? The dude played 6 years at college. He had, the most snaps out of any quarterback in this draft class, the most dropbacks out of any quarterback in the past 2 draft classes. So it's going to be what really is his ceiling beyond what he's showing right now. And I think he's shown that he looks like a veteran, to be honest. You go look at the play. Everybody was making a huge deal, Malik, of Sean Payton and Bo Nix yelling at each other on the sideline. I love it. And what actually happened was the play was designed to be a slant, and the slant looked like it was open, but the linebacker dropped, into Bo Nix's sight, and it would have been a tough pass. So instead of going to his first read, his initial progression, he took a deep shot, and that wasn't on his progression. It was the guy literally going to clear out space, but he dropped it right in the bucket, and the wide receiver wasn't expecting. The receiver dropped it, and that's why they came back to the sideline. I believe it was 4th down. And Sean Payton and him were yelling at each other. And people say, oh, well, this means the Broncos are going to suck. What are we talking about? The Broncos absolutely dog walked the Las Vegas Raiders. So this Broncos team has shown me a lot. They've shown me that they can, beat the Jets. They can go beat a divisional opponent in the Raiders, and not just beat them, but absolutely demolish them. And Bo Nix has shown me, hey, if you can go add talent to him, Cortland Sutton is doing absolutely nothing for him. The running game is mediocre at best. If you can go add talent to him, I think Bo Nix can be a Brock Purdy. I think Bo Nix can be a Jared Goff. And I think that's what is the difference in my eyes. I thought Bo Nix wasn't a first-round caliber talent. I thought he was fine. But put him in the right system. He's a veteran type of quarterback. And yes, he's young. He's making mistakes. But he's got all the tools to succeed, at least as a game manager, and be a perennial playoff contender if the team around him fits.
All right, so you're a believer of Bo Nix. You believe
Yes.
Jaden Daniels is God. Got it.
Is
got
who?
everything. No, I was reiterating a lot of stuff that you
I
said.
did not say that.
But I think that the rookie quarterbacks have shown a lot. I'm still want to see what Drake May has at some point. Patriots don't want to play him right now, obviously, because they have Jacoby Brissett. We'll see what happens, but I want to keep the conversation rolling. Let's talk about the Las Vegas Raiders and how everything in Vegas seems to be going to crap right now. It's crazy. A lot of Raiders fans were, pushing for Antonio Pierce to be their head coach. And I'm not sure people understood the financial side of things and why they had to hire a guy like Antonio Pierce, because the Raiders are still paying Gruden. The Raiders are in a situation in which they're paying Gruden, they're paying McDaniels, and they couldn't go out there and make a huge splash from the coaching standpoint, which is why they had to, bring in a guy like Antonio Pierce, who was already on their team, who was the interim coach, and it just made a lot of sense. The fan base wanted it. It made sense from a logistics standpoint, financial standpoint, and they made it happen, right? But let me be clear. Antonio Pierce is still a young coach.
Yeah.
He's a young coach in the league. He's a guy that's never done this before. He's first time he's ever doing it. First time he's getting this opportunity. And honestly, he kind of, I would say that he almost was his process was a little bit sped up compared to some others, and mainly that's because of his relationship with Mark Davis, his relationship with the Raiders culture, and having been a part of that. And I would think that the Antonio Pierce thing was probably right place, right time. However, I still think that he's good. I think he can be a good coach in this league. I really believe that, especially for the Raiders. I think he was the best guy for the job when you put all those other factors, contributing factors uh, into light. Now it's causing a lot of Raiders fans to call for his job. It's causing people to say he should be on the hot seat. Missed that. You got his superstar, number one wide receiver in Devontae Adams, essentially asking for a trade, not being happy there. I'll just say this. It always felt like the Devontae Adams thing was going to happen once Derek Carr left. This doesn't shock me. This doesn't shock anybody. Devontae Adams is truly still one of the best receivers in the league, but he's regulated to playing with guys like Gardner Minshew, and that's no shot, but it is what it is. You go from Aaron Rodgers to Derek Carr to Gardner Minshew, Aiden O'Connell. It's just been like a revolving door at the quarterback position for the Raiders. I understand a lot of things. I mean, here's my thing. I don't think Antonio Pierce should be mentioned in a hot seat situation when you consider the mismanagement of the Devontae Adams situation, not from his standpoint, but maybe from the front office's standpoint, and the inability to go out there and actually truly address the quarterback position. I just feel like those are areas where I can't fault him too much. So I think he should get some grace. I think he should get some leeway. I don't think Antonio Pierce should be on the hot seat. I think he's working with what he's got right now. And I think from what he has done so far hasn't been necessarily the worst. What are your thoughts, Daniel?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that Antonio Pierce deserves a shot, right? And you go look at his history. People are just disregarding what he's done. The reason why that they liked him was because he's a former NFL player. He's a Super Bowl winning player, and he got respect. And you look at last year, I think there was a false sense of what was expected. You look at the final, 6 games of their season, they went 4-2. They went on that hot streak at the end of the season. People thought, oh, it's going to be sweet. This is what it's always like. No, that's not what it's always like. And when you look at situations like this, Malik, you have to look at who else is contributing. Before we go to Antonio Pierce, I hate to say it, but Lugetzky, it might be time for him to go, right? And that's what typically happens before the head coach gets fired. A lot of times, the coordinator on the wrong side of the ball gets fired first. And right now, the wrong side of the ball is the offense. So how I look at the Raiders situation, I think they've got a lot of moving parts that are serious issues. You look at the Devontae Adams situation. So you're without your wide receiver one. You look at your quarterback, who's Gardner Minshew, he's a mediocre quarterback. He's a fine quarterback. He's a guy that can do it with elite talent, but Jacoby Myers isn't doing it. And you look at what they just faced. I mean, they've been decent for the beginning of the season. They faced a great Broncos defense. So I'm not calling the panic button on Antonio Pierce yet. I think the Raiders themselves have a lot of issues. And I think that Antonio Pierce can be a good head coach. I think that he is a great locker room guy. It's just going to be, seeing if he can turn it around, because this situation can get ugly fast. And that's what I'm concerned about, right? You look at Josh McDaniels, the dude got a year and a half. If Josh McDaniels got a year and a half for all that went on in his regime, give Antonio Pierce at least a year, guys, right? It's okay to say maybe he wasn't the right guy for the job. Maybe that the Raiders jumped the gun based off of last year. But I'm not of the belief that Antonio Pierce can't be a great head coach, that he can't be a fine head coach. I think the quarterback situation is putrid. I think that they need to go and get a real franchise guy. They need to have some real direction there. And you just got to figure out what you're doing on your offense, right? Devontae Adams, you got to figure that situation. I think you got to ship him out at this point. I mean, the dude is sitting out with a quote-unquote hamstring injury. He might be hurt, but it seems like he's just, waiting to get traded. So I think that the Raiders,
that's the players MO. Whenever they want to be traded or something like that, they come up with a hamstring injury. You know why? Because you can't like really test and see if hamstring is one of those weird things. You kind of have to just go off of the player's word and be honest, but it's always the hamstring. It's always the hamstring, which brings us into another light. If a player has nagging hamstring injury, if I'm a team, why would I trade for a player with a nagging hamstring injury?
Mhm.
Unless you know what we know. Remember Jalen Ramsey was the same thing. Hamstring. So he got traded out of Jacksonville, but continue, sorry.
Yeah. So when I look at this whole situation, man, it's a crap show, and that's where you just hope that Antonio Pierce and they start to figure it out, because if they don't figure it out, it's gonna look slow for him, and that's my concern for him. Is like, I think there's a world at the end of the season where he is gone, and that would suck, because I don't think that he's necessarily getting a fair shake because of the situation, because of the quarterback. So if I were to make a prediction for the Raiders, I think that they end up trading Devontae Adams, and I think that they do end up not having the greatest end of the season. I do.
But like firing Antonio Pierce,
What
I
does
hear
that
where you're
do?
coming from. No, it's not what it does. They like literally cannot financially go out there and sign another coach. So you mean to tell
Yeah.
me they sign him to that means at this point they'd be paying 3 coaches who are no longer on their, coaching their football team. They'd be paying Pierce, Gruden, McDaniels. That's just not what's going to happen. I'm being honest with you. Raiders have to bite this bullet.
Really?
Antonio Pierce ain't getting fired.
So
No.
you think, so how long? So you think he's their long-term head coach?
I don't think it's long term. Until they get out of this situation, they're fighting.
They're gonna have to pay him for. I think they're paying McDaniels for a while.
They're paying John Gruden for 10 years. They have like
Yeah, that's
7 years
crazy.
left.
That's crazy.
They have to pay him. And they guaranteed him $100 million contract.
And then McDaniels got 6 years, something like that.
Listen, stupid. What is it? Stupid is as stupid does.
Yeah.
And they went out there and they signed these coaches, and I think they did Antonio Pierce for 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
They're not going to like this would be an unforgivable offense. Unfortunately, Raiders, when you guys picked your next man to be the head coach, when he dropped that interim tag, you got your coach of the future until they get out of the situation. I think Antonio Pierce's job is safe for at least the next 2 seasons.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
They would have to have a colossal F up. That being said, the moment they can financially, break themselves and rid themselves of the contract, they will do that. But right now they're paying two former coaches as it is.
Yeah.
It doesn't make a whole lot of sense if you ask me. Which brings me to the one thing I will say. Here's one thing I will say. There used to be a guy that was the coach of the Raiders. And I talked about this years ago on a couple of my other shows, and people called me stupid because it's Gruden. It's John Gruden back. It's how's it going, man? Everybody was pumped up about him. There was a guy the Raiders had as a football coach who honestly did a really, really good job with them, had them competitive. And when they let that guy go, I looked at them like they were stupid. His name is Jack Del Rio.
Mhm.
You see, this should be the classic. It's not always greener on the other side. The grass isn't always greener. Jack Del Rio was a guy that had the Raiders going. Jack Del Rio was a guy that fielded a very competitive roster. They were able to win a lot of games. Derek Carr put together some of his best performances under him. But they got greedy. They got greedy, and they put themselves in the situation that they're right now, which I call hell. That's really what it is. It's really what it is right now for the Raiders. And you kind of have to bite that bullet. But I'll just say this for the people out there that have coaches you want to be fired. I'm not talking about Bengals fans right now. For people out there that have coaches that want to be fired because maybe you're going to the playoffs and maybe you're just not getting the job done, or maybe you're competitive, but you're not just getting the job done. Understand whoever the replacement is, whoever might come through that door might not be everything that you want them to be. Whoever might come through that door might not be able to put together a winning culture.
Mhm.
Hiring, listen, I believe a head coach hirings in the NFL are of the most importance out of any other sport. I think I've seen crappy head coaches in the NBA win championships. I've seen it. And I don't think it's sort of a necessary thing. And maybe soccer. Our, TWSN's residential hockey guy, Dan Ivan's in the building today. Dan, I don't know what your thoughts are on hockey. Would you say a hockey manager is important as well?
Absolutely. When you consider a lot of things, coaching is still a really big thing, but there have been times where I don't think you could say the same thing where someone who's a bad tenured coach is getting a team over that hump.
Yeah. So you think basically hockey coaches in hockey are very, very important. Same level as NFL, would you say NFL?
I would say 100%.
Okay. I see. I'm not an avid hockey guy, so I don't know. The same thing when it comes to baseball managers. I don't know. I know a lot of people are excited about the Reds hiring the new dude they just hired, who's won 2 World Series and all this stuff like that. But it's interesting. I just think that when you go out there, you hire a guy to be your head coach, you got to make sure that he's a guy that you can see yourself building with long term, and a guy that you think not only going to implement the right culture, but implement the right schematics to make this team be successful. We're going to get to that later. But what I will say is for the Raiders fans, hold on tight. It's going to be a bumpy ride for a little bit. But I think if you guys are able to get a quarterback in the draft, things could look a lot brighter in Las Vegas a lot sooner rather than later. I want to keep the conversation rolling, but before we do, make sure you guys do us a favor. Give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, turn on post notifications so you guys don't miss when we go live or when we upload content. We have almost over 120 people watching us live right now. We greatly appreciate that you guys are spending your mornings with us. Give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications so you guys can keep up with all the content that we have coming out on a daily basis. Let's talk about the Baltimore Ravens. Did we get it wrong with them? Because the Ravens look good.
Yeah.
Not defensively speaking, but offensively speaking, Lamar Jackson just seems like he can do no wrong this year. Lamar Jackson just seems like he's continuously rising to the occasion. Lamar Jackson just seems like a guy that's ready to take the next step. Some of the throws he made yesterday, impressive. The way he was able to stay within himself when things got muddy in the pocket, impressive. The way he was able to make something happen, put the team on his back when maybe the other team wasn't putting everything together, pretty impressive. I'm just go out right and say I don't believe in the Baltimore Ravens long term. I think that they're always going to find a way. I think they're always going to find a way to kind of get in their own way. I don't think that their offense can hold up. I worry about the long term health of guys like Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson over the span of a season. But Lamar Jackson said he dropped weight. Lamar Jackson said, "Hey, you know what? I wanted to get back quicker. I wanted to make sure that I could be the same speedy quarterback that I used to be because he felt like he was a little bit heavier the last couple of years. He feels like he's down to his best playing weight, and he looks like it." That guy breaking tackles, being super elusive, finding, Isaiah Likely in the end. I mean, it's incredible to watch. Danny, what are your thoughts on Lamar Jackson, the Baltimore Ravens, and their potential to finally break through this year?
I think I don't know what to think. Like, this is the same team I've been seeing. Like, we've been seeing this. Look at last year. Last year, respectfully, was not a fluke. That's not that is what the Ravens do. They are a very good football team, albeit they are a very great football team. The concern with them is always, all right, do they do it in the playoffs? And Lamar Jackson, he's proven time and time again, the dude is an MVP level talent. The dude is a top 5 quarterback in the NFL, no doubt about it. The question is going to be, and it always is, what happens in the playoffs? Last year, they answered the call until they faced the Kansas City Chiefs. And that's just what it comes down to, right? I look at Lamar Jackson League. The dude is the favorite to win the MVP this year. I mean, he's got the 8th most passing yards. He's got 9 passing touchdowns. The dude has 1 interception, so he's not making terrible plays. Yes, at the end of the game, he had that 1 fumble. That's messed up, whatever. Lamar Jackson is an MVP caliber talent. This offense under Todd Monken is absolutely thriving. And I think we all undersold how much Derrick Henry would actually help this offense. I think when they are on, this offense is on. When they are ahead, they are winning and they are dominating. The question is going to be, can they do what they did against the Bengals in the playoffs against other teams? Can they do it? And that remains to be seen, right? Can they play from behind? Can they come back from a 10-point lead? And on the flip side of things, look at what they almost did against the Cowboys. Look at what they almost did against the Buffalo Bills. Can they play with the lead? That's the biggest concern. John Harbaugh, we were having discussions at the beginning of the season. They started out 0-2. I was concerned. I said, hey, this is your MO. Your MO is to dominate teams in the first, second, third quarter, and then choke games away in the fourth quarter. So, Malik, I think that this team is legit. I think that this team is a Super Bowl contender. I think Lamar Jackson has proven. He's proven me wrong. This dude is a bona fide top 5 quarterback, if not top 3 quarterback in the NFL right now. As far as it comes to the playoffs, so I'm going to say belief. You got to show me. It's the same thing. It's a very similar discussion to a Josh Allen, right? Josh Allen has had absurd performances in the playoffs. The dude has been in the conversation at points, even the best quarterback in the NFL, but he hasn't gotten it done. He hasn't gotten to the Super Bowl. I think Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson are in the same exact boat. MVP caliber talents with question marks at their head coach at times. And they're both guys that have gotten passes because of the rest of their team. So, Malik, I think that this team is the best team in the AFC right now, but I don't think there's a gap. I think that there is a huge group of talented teams that are right there. So I think this team is going to be a 10 to 12 win team. I think they're going to make the playoffs. They'll win a playoff game. It remains to be seen if they go out there and win a Super Bowl. But this team hasn't shown me anything different than what we've seen. They're a dominating team, but they still have serious flaws.
And they are a dominating team, but I do still feel like they look a little different, though.
No, for sure.
The difference is they're making the plays that they need to make, whereas I feel like the last couple of years they were just kind of just a hair off a little bit.
Yeah.
I just feel like the Ravens have done a really, really good job. If you ask me, of find a way to put it all together. Honestly, Lamar Jackson just seems like he has gotten better as a passer.
Mhm.
I mean, it's not hard to do against that Bengals defense, I would say, but I've been very, very impressed. And we've got a residential troll in the comment section. Sports Guru says, laugh my ass off. Look at the losers worrying about the Ravens' future. Oh, I mean, this is a morning show where we talk about the entire NFL, and we discuss everything that's happened, and we're actually praising y'all right now. So I mean, I guess you'd rather me say Lamar Jackson's a running back like every other national media show does. I guess you'd rather me say that. Damn if you do, damn if you don't. If you guys do us a favor, give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications so you guys don't miss when we go live or upload content. Let's talk about the Bengals. More importantly, let's talk about Zac Taylor. I have a real concern that Zac Taylor might be losing the locker room. Seriously. And I people might think that the header of today's show might be incorrect or infactual, but I've seen enough teams to realize that, maybe the infrastructure is cracking a little bit. Maybe the infrastructure isn't as solid as Zac Taylor might think it is in fairy tale land. You have your playmakers coming out and pretty much dog walking your coaching in overtime. Everybody, I mean, even some of the most Zac Taylor truthers or Bengal truthers have come out and they've said Zac Taylor is a coward. Those weren't my words. Those are words from people on the social channels. Zac Taylor coached like a coward. The crazy thing about it? It was people from PFF. It was people from, various outlets. Everybody was like, you take the ball out of Joe Burrow's hands in the most important moment of yesterday, right? Because the overtime period where your defense, who everybody's bagging on right now, and they say, hey, you know what? The defense sucks. Hey, listen, the defense got their the defense got the stop that was needed. The defense somehow got that stop that was needed, recovered it. Even if they didn't necessarily cause it, they recovered it. And they ran it back a little bit. They got some yardage out of it to the point where you were playing with house money, as Daniel will call you, and you still weren't able to get any more yards. You still weren't able to make it work for you. And, I felt like Zac Taylor's comments yesterday were a little bit scapegoatish to some degree. When he said the play that we had initially called the first play was actually a designed pass, but Joe did a great job of checking out of that. That was a nice save at the end, respectfully. That was a nice save at the end. But if I'm being honest, it felt like he was almost deflecting, because even Zach, even though that there was a passing play called, let's say that, even though you came out and, heavy personnel set, looked like it was ready for a run. Even though that was the option, you still had two other plays to work with. You still had second and third down to work with to gain more yardage. And you chose not to. I have real concerns about Zac Taylor's culture. Listen, the problem with bringing in guys like Zac Taylor and company alluded to what they wanted to do. We want to bring in leaders. We want to bring in captains. We want to bring in guys from winning programs. Those aren't my words. Those are Zac Taylor's words. The problem with bringing guys that are used to winning, that are captains, that are locker room leaders, is when you start to lose and they're not accustomed to losing, pressure gets put on. When you go out there and you draft guys like Jamar Chase, who won a national championship, Joe Burrow, who won a national championship, T. Higgins, who might have won a national championship with Trevor Lawrence, but also, how many games did Clemson lose when T. Higgins was there? When you bring in those guys, okay, you bring in guys from winning programs, guys like Marius Mims from Georgia. When you bring in guys that are used to winning and playing winning football, Dax Hill, Michigan, DJ Turner, Michigan. When you bring in those guys, they're expecting to win. You see, the honeymoon phase is over for Zach. You know, everybody was pretty much coming out there and they were like defending Zach the first couple of seasons when, you know, everything started to really mesh together. And they were saying, well, we believe in Zach. We believe in this coaching staff. At some point, when do you say the coaching staff is holding us back? At some point, when do you say, you know what? Something's not working here. You know, I always talk about coaching. I believe every coach in the NFL, for the most part, can coach. But what makes an average coach to a great coach to a good coach is one special factor. How you coach on you know, in situational in certain situations, in high pressure situations. Situational coaching is what makes the difference. Situational coaching is what determines if this thing is going to work or if it's not. So you could coach when everything is going great, when you have the in-game script and all that kind of stuff. But what happens when the script goes out the window? What happens when you have to make a critical decision in overtime to put your team in the best position to win? What happens then? Listen, I'll stand on this right now too. The defense is bad. The defense is bad. And I'm sitting up here saying I don't know if there's a defensive coordinator that can come in and fix broken tackles. I don't know if there's a defensive coordinator that can come in and do a better job as to what Lou has done with the players that he's been given. But what I will say, I'll stand on the table and I'll defend that guy like I did defend him before when Bengals fans were calling for his job. But one thing I will say as well, here's what I'll say. As much as I'll defend Lou, and I believe he is the man for the job, and I think he needs better talent. The only question that I have is, why do you continuously play Von Bell knowing he's a stuck-in-the-mud safety? This is a guy that got cut from the Carolina Panthers, right? If he was as good as we thought he could be, and it's fine, players regress. But I'm starting to believe that Jesse Bates was a guy that was able to hide a lot of the deficiencies of a guy like Von Bell. So maybe Von Bell wanted out of Cincinnati, knowing Jesse Bates was leaving and knowing, hey, you know, I might need to cash in for another big contract. One more time. He went to Carolina. He looked bad. You know? He looked bad. He's back in Cincinnati. Go figure. He looks bad. Listen, letting Jesse Bates walk, I talked about it back then, Daniel, and I'll say it now, was a dumb decision. Locker room leader. He was the guy that got everybody to show up to all-season workouts when they weren't mandatory. He was a leader for this football team on so many critical years where we needed it. And when it came time to pay that guy who made some amazing stops for you, whether against the Kansas City Chiefs, whether against the Tennessee Titans, whether it's in the Super Bowl, this guy made plays after plays after plays. You let that guy walk out of the door. And now you're left with a product, right, where you're searching for safeties that can do the job. And you know what Jesse Bates is doing in Atlanta right now? He's having another all-pro year. Dumb decision. Dumb decisions gives you dumb results. And the fact that this Bengals football team is 1-4, it's a dumb result, in my opinion. You are what your record says you are. I believe in my whole heart Zac Taylor's losing the locker room. I believe that. I also don't think that there's some magical person that's walking through that door that's immediately going to change things, respectfully or disrespectfully. I don't care. I think people, that the thing is, Lou told people. Here's my thing. Lou told people the day I lose Jesse Bates and Von Bell, and I quote, "It's going to be a dark day." So how are you shocked when he loses his two safeties, who, by the way, one of them is the best safety, and this is the result you get? Hold on, Sean. I'm going to get to your comment. Relax. How are you shocked that this is the result that you get? The drafting of Dax Hill to be the free safety of the future did not work out. But I just can't call for a guy's job that literally has begged and asked for resources to help this defense, and the front office lets it walk. No defensive coordinator is coming in and fixing that. He said the same thing about losing DJ Reader. You let him walk, and you replaced him with Sheldon Rankins, a guy who has missed 3 games because of a hamstring injury, who, by the way, also isn't even a run stopper. The guy has told you what he needed. He's told you what he needed. And Bengals fans, everyone's like, fire Lou. To hire who? Who's coming in with this front office favoring the offense as much as they do? And I get it, offensive-driven team. But this is the first year. This is the first year offensively that the offense is finally looking like it should consistently. I'm going to pull something up real quick. And, or Dan, you can pull this up. The Bengals' first-round draft picks the last 5 years.
Okay.
I'm going somewhere with this. Or 6 years.
So they've got 2024, Amarius Mims. 2023, Miles Murphy. 2022, Dax Hill. 2021, Jamar Chase. Joe Burrow. Jonah Williams. Jonah Williams and Billy Price.
All right.
And then John Ross.
Well, I don't care. Well, it's about this regime, but that's my bad. The premium picks that the Bengals have had, right? Meaning top 20 picks that they've had in their respective draft since Zac Taylor's been the coach have been all offense. Miles Murphy was a guy that was picked in the back end of the draft, right? At the end of the first round.
Yep.
Dax Hill was a guy that was picked in the back end of the draft, the end of the first round. All the premium picks that they've had, guys that were in the top 18, top 20, have all gone to offense. There have been a lot of resources that have been allocated to said offensive line, to said offense. I don't know if I can honestly say the same resources have been allocated to the defense.
No.
So how are we shocked when a team who literally was making key turnovers during that Super Bowl run, but what did they do that year? They signed Larry Ogunjobi. They had DJ Reader. They had Cheetah. They signed Cheetah Bayawuzie. They signed guys that were going to sort of make a difference. That's what they did. But the foundation starts to crack when you let great players walk out of the door. And here's one thing I'll say, and I'll die on this hill. Not only do I watch Bengals football, I analyze Bengals football. And let me tell you what it says to me when I've analyzed it. Lou Anarumo and his defense has saved Zac Taylor's ass in offense far more often than the opposite.
Yes.
And that's a fact. The Bengals defense, even though it was a more opportunistic defense, has been more consistent than the Zac Taylor-led Bengals offense through the 6-year tenure. That's a fact. And I'm not here to point the blame, but I'm saying when we call for someone's job, let's also realize what the person is working with. And then we'll get another defensive coordinator in here, and then we'll be doing the same exact thing besides looking at the head man in charge. Slow starts. Getting absolutely owned in your division. Like, I'll call a spade a spade. If a dude's job needs to be gone, I'll tell you. And the optics, the numbers will say, Lou's defense has been bad. But we also have to realize what he's been working with. Here's my stance on it. If you're going to call for Lou's job, Zac Taylor should be out the door as well. That's my stance. There's no world for me in which Zac Taylor should still be the head coach of the Bengals if Lou Anarumo was fired. Because that dude has saved his ass on more counts than one. The dude has dealt with so much. He's dealt with so much and has been given very little to work with. Do you know how much the organization paid Von Bell to get back? People are like, well, you know what? He asked for Von Bell to be back. Yeah, there's a difference between asking for Von Bell and then asking for a Justin Simmons or asking for another player. You know the organization is not going to do it. They're going to say, nah, Lou, here's what we're going to give you. We're going to give you Von Bell back, who we're going to pay $1 million a year to come back because he's also getting paid by the Carolina Panthers his salary too. It was a cheap option, and it was a name-worthy thing to help the organization or the fan base be excited for something because, yes, we got one of our safeties back who was a part of our Super Bowl run. Yes, we got a guy back who's literally been a cog in our defense for the last couple of years. But what we didn't talk about is the fact that he got cut from the Carolina Panthers. If he was a good football player and a bad Carolina Panthers defense secondary that literally is looking for good football players, why would they cut Von Bell if he was actually that good? You know what, Steve Simmons? I like the fact that you asked that comment just now. And I know I'm cooking right now. I know we still have to do the fantasy thing. Let's talk about it. Put his comment up. Yeah. Lou can't develop talent. Let's talk about that. Lou can't develop talent. We have offensive players drafted that have panned out. Tell me one defensive player drafted late first, early second, or third that has panned out. Sure, I'll humbly oblige. Dax Hill has looked like a damn good corner. Cam Taylor-Britt, before this year, looked like a very damn good corner. I think what you're missing in this situation, Logan Wilson, damn good linebacker. Jermaine Pratt, damn good linebacker. Keem Davis-Gaither, damn good linebacker. We can keep playing this game all day. We can have this conversation all day, but I don't want this to look like I'm standing for a guy, but I'm just saying when we call for a guy's job, let's actually talk about it. There are, like any other draft, there are going to be misses. Chris Jenkins looks like a good player. Joseph Asai, I told everybody who would listen, that guy ain't it. People were excited about that guy ain't it. But don't say he hasn't developed players. Don't say that. So the fact of the matter is Sam Hubbard, when Lou took over this defense, has had some of his best years, under Lou. Trey Hendrickson turned into an absolute monster under Lou. So what are you talking about? Steve? What do you mean he hasn't developed players? I just named a whole list of players he's developed. He's also gotten guys paid. Eli Apple had one of his best career turnarounds under Lou. Got him paid. Von Bell had one of his best, because you know what the Saints were saying? We're not going to extend that guy because he has deficiencies in his game. What are we talking about? We can have this conversation all day. And how can you put the jury out on Myles Murphy? And you said you just named a bunch of players that are good, but then why are they so terribly bad? I just mentioned that. The engine of the Bengals defense, the communicator on the Bengals defense was one of the best safeties in football. Lou literally talked about having that guy and what the importance of having that guy would mean to his defense. Trey Flowers, he's literally found spots for guys. And you're out here saying he's never developed anybody. And you're trying to say Zac Taylor, who drafted Jamar Chase with a top 5 pick and drafted Joe Burrow with a top with the first overall pick, and T. Higgins, who had no business falling to the back end of the first round. Everybody knew he was going to the Bengals. You're sitting up here trying to say that guy developed those elite players that were already going to be elite players they would have already produced. Literally, they're living up to what the expectations were when they came out of their respective drafts. What players has he developed? We could talk about the offensive line. We could talk about Jonah Williams. We could talk about how that was an abysmal fail. We could talk about this all day. Amarius Mims was considered the best tackle in the draft with smooth feet. The only thing that stopped him from getting drafted early was, guess what? He got injured in limited college film. That's what it was. Who has Zac Taylor developed? If Zac Taylor could get the most out of guys, why is Jermaine Burton still sitting on the bench? Why is Trent Irwin or other guys out snapping him? What are we talking about? If he's such an offensive magician, why can't he find a way to get Mike Gesicki involved in the game consistently? Come on. I'm not trying to make this a tit for tat thing, but if you're going to call for a guy's job, let's actually know what we're talking about. Daniel.
Yeah, I mean, not much else I can add to that. I'm going to be honest with you. I think it's very simple in the stance that when you look at the defense, God damn it, they just need more talent. And I thought you actually brought up a great point. And I think that a lot of people need to understand exactly what you said, right? And the stance is look at what Lou is saying versus what he actually wants. Something, for example, Joseph Asai, right? All offseason long, Lou has said, hey, we believe in this guy. If you are relying on a Joseph Osai to be your main pass rush outside of Trey Hendrickson, there's a problem. And that's what the concern is, right? I look at this defense, and yes, they do have a lot of issues. And I think it's as simple as you have invested so much into the offense and you're not investing as much in the defense. You look at T. Higgins, you look at Jamar Chase, you look at Joe Burrow, you look at the offensive line, for example, right? And I think that's where the biggest question lies in the totem pole for what can you question? The quarterback, Joe Burrow, you could question him at the beginning of the season. You can't question him now. He's playing like an MVP. Your coordinators, you can't really question Dan Pitcher since you're the one calling plays. And your defense coordinator, sure, we can talk about Lou Anarumo. So that's where the main conversation is. Other teams, there's no talent on offense. Bullshit. There's talent on offense here. And the last thing was just the offensive line, Malik. That's the one that people were saying, well, if they get the offensive line right, this team will be fixed. This team is too damn talented to be losing these close games. I don't think these close games are on a Lou Anarumo. The Chiefs game was in hand. Their defense played great against Kansas City Chiefs. That wasn't on Lou Anarumo. This game, you had the ball in your hands in overtime when, quite frankly, to be honest, and I think a lot of people felt this way when the Ravens were driving. Yeah, I was like, man, it's looking slow. The Ravens might just come out here, score a touchdown on the first drive. It's over. You somehow get the turnover, and the ball was in your hands. So I think that, Malik, yeah, I think you're on the nail. You hit the nail on the head, right? And I'm not necessarily saying Zac Taylor should be fired now, but these questions need to be risen, right? And the issue is whether we believe it or not, whether Zac Taylor wants to say in our locker room, that's all that matters. I'm going to be honest. I think Zach's letting the outside noise get to him. And the reason why I say that is you look at the rest of the plays, what everybody else is saying. Why is Jamar Chase? Why is Joe Burrow? Why are these guys not deflecting when Zac Taylor is? And that's what concerns me.
They're being leaders.
Yes.
They're being locker room and good culture leaders. They're for not airing the guy out. But if we're being honest with you right now, everybody knows what it is. Joe Burrow literally said in his press conference, he knows the reason they're 1-4.
Yep.
And all he can do is simply look I don't know how much more perfect Joe Burrow could play. Obviously, the interception unacceptable. I don't know why we're even passing the ball in that situation when you should be in 4-minute offense. My thought process is everybody knows what it is. No one's shocked. We all know. Guy got fired from UC. Can't call a play to save his life. But listen, he has gotten better. I don't know.
No, you're right. I think that's what concerns me when put yourself in the shoes of the players. Joe Burrow, the star quarterback, 350 and 5 touchdowns. Jamar Chase, 190 and 2 touchdowns.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be honest with you guys. Put yourself in that locker room. At some point, the players are going to look at each other and say, yo, we're superstars. Yo, we are balling. T. Higgins, the guy that everybody was discussing before. T. Higgins sitting back looking pretty now. 2 touchdowns, 90 yards, 8 receptions. These dudes are playing their asses off. And I hate to say it, but this is the way sports work. Someone is going to have to get blamed. And I struggle to see how they're going to blame their quarterback. I struggle to see how they're going to blame their wide receiver. The blame should be going on the front office. And I hate to say it, Zac Taylor, the position you're in, they are going to have to blame you. And it's up to you to correct that. And I'm going to be honest, the way to correct that isn't by saying, well, we actually called the pass, but Joe did a great job checking into the run. Nah, respectfully, your answer, and I thought you did a great job of saying this, Malik, yesterday was, hey, say we are 1-4. We have the makings of a great football team, but we are underperforming. We are going to get this shit corrected now. You guys are going to see a different team on Sunday. We are going to go out and focus on the New York Giants. It seems like Zac Taylor's trying to defend his ass. He's trying to defend. Quite frankly, that's the exact opposite mindset you should be having. Now is the time when you really should be saying respectfully. I would have much rather him said, hey, listen, you guys can write all the stories you want. We're going to focus in the building. This was my fault. I lost this game. Joe Burrow played his ass off today. Jamar Chase played his ass off today. Lou Anarumo did a great job of, stopping, getting the turnover. This was my fault. And I'm going to be honest, if I'm a player, at least I can look at that and say, okay, we can work with that. So Zac Taylor, I just hope, and this is my plea to them, I hope they don't lose this game against the Giants, Malik.
I'm going to tell you right now, the Giants are coming on strong right now. And their defensive line is no joke, in my opinion. Listen, it's not going to be as easy as people think it's going to be. The Giants can come to play. The national media will tell you one thing and say this and that and a third. The fact of the matter is Daniel Jones playing a lot better right now than people give him credit for. He is playing a lot better than people give him credit for right now. It's not going to be what people think it is. I just think at the end of the day, when you call for a guy's job, you have to ask yourself the question, who's coming in here with the talent that they had? Because that's just scapegoating someone at that point. And that I'm being honest with you. Let me finish. Yeah. That's going to create fractures within the locker room, especially for players that know what it is already. Mm-hmm. They'll feel like they have a coach that, because if you're willing to scapegoat your defensive coordinator or whoever, who say you won't scapegoat us? Mm-hmm. Like, I think it's important to look at it in the mirror. And Zac Taylor called a great offensive game yesterday, but in the moment where it mattered the most, situational coaching, he fumbled. It's as simple as that. Like, it's as simple as that. And we can all. I hate that it has come to this. We can all pin the nail on Lou and say, oh, it's because lose this, lose that. But when we were getting those critical turnovers, when he had that, it's not like he's we've seen him when he has talent on the defensive side of the ball. We've seen the defense play well. We've seen them show up. We've seen them perform. We've seen the timely turnovers. So I just don't know how you can call for a guy's job in this situation. That's just my take on it. I disagree fully. I'll be on record saying that I disagree fully. And if you're going to fire that guy, you should end the entire coaching staff. The entire coaching staff should go out the door. But also realize that's the case. You're probably losing out on Marion Hobby. You're losing out on a couple of other guys as well. You're losing out on Troy Walters. You're losing out pitcher. You're probably losing out. The entire staff is probably being cleaned. And I just think that, looking at it from that perspective, I think it's important to keep the main thing. And it's disappointing. Anything else you want to add, Daniel?
Yeah, I think just a couple things real quick. Like the governor said, you guys are wrong. That's
I don't even want to go there. Yeah. He completely just untapped to the situation completely. To say that the O-line is a problem right now is ludicrous, but continue with it.
No, completely. I think that's just the final statement I want to make is this team, they've got the talent on offense. The offense is playing its ass off. Just if you guys are Bengals fans, take yourself out of Bengals shoes and go look at other situations. Look at the Brandon Staley situation. Look at Mike McDaniel's situation. Look at the Doug Peterson situation. Ask them and ask yourself, what is the issue there, right? Brandon Staley with the Chargers was situational football. Doug Peterson right now, a lot of times it is situational football. A lot of these coaches, Malik, the ones that are having serious failures, the one that get fired is situational football. And that's where the problem really lies right now. You had the game in hand against the Chiefs. You lost. You had the game in hand against the Ravens. You lost. At some point, you have to win those games, and a lot of that right now is, and it has to fall back on the head coach and Duke Tobin. There is definitely conversation as well of, hey, are we putting this team in the best possible position to succeed?
You know, people are asking if the Bengals lose on Sunday Night Football against the Giants, what happens? I'll just say it'll be very. I think that you're in a situation where conversations would need to be had. I think you would have to start. Obviously, the players are always going to try to continue to win games, right? Because there's no such thing as tanking. But I do think that seats will be uncomfortable. I think that it'll look very bleak, and I think that this show is going to be something if we wind up losing to the Giants. But want to thank you guys again. If you guys do us a favor, give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications so you guys don't miss when we go live or when we upload content from the TWSN studios. I want to head on over to the NBA just briefly. Just want to touch on Kawhi Leonard real quick. Kawhi Leonard made some interesting comments really quickly. Jim, if you could do me a favor, roll the clip.
Just the new guys, just watching them, the new additions we have from Chris Dunn to Derrick Jones Jr. To some of the young guys that we brought in with Kai Jones last year, and just seeing how they could develop. So just watching them from day one to day two to day three, just seeing their progression. But nobody stood out to me so far.
Yeah. There was a couple of comments, man. I'm not sure if that was necessarily the right video, but there was some couple of comments made by Kawhi Leonard regarding the loss of Paul George this past season. And if you ask me, that's a guy that's just tone deaf. This is a guy who doesn't realize that a guy like Paul George pretty much carried the Clippers team the last couple of seasons. He was the one consistent guy for the Clippers. And I think that to have this God complex about you that nobody was my savior I don't ever look at anybody as my savior on the basketball court. It's just completely the wrong way to look at things. And I think it might even behoove the Clippers to really look at this thing inward. You want my honest opinion? Listen, I hate to be real. It's almost like when I had that one take a couple of years back when I said Kenny Pickett only got drafted by the Pittsburgh Steelers in the first round because Kenny Pickett only got drafted by the Pittsburgh Steelers in the first round because he went to the University of Pittsburgh, and Kawhi Leonard only got that contract extension because the Clippers have this new stadium coming, and they needed a superstar, and they're afraid they're not going to be able to get a superstar in here to put assets in seats. The fact of the matter is, Kawhi Leonard's name value holds a lot more weight right now than his actual production and what he provides to this Clippers basketball team. No doubt, when Kawhi Leonard is on the court, he is a difference maker unless he's playing back-to-backs. To me, there's too many at-risks when it comes to a guy like Kawhi Leonard, right? There's, hey, Kawhi Leonard, you were signed to an extension because of the new stadium. Kawhi Leonard is a great player unless he's playing back-to-back, because we all know Kawhi Leonard doesn't play back-to-backs because his knees just can't hold up anymore. There are a lot of question marks surrounding Kawhi Leonard. And I think that if you're looking at it from a situation like, hey, we're trying to win championships, you're not looking at Kawhi Leonard and saying Kawhi Leonard puts us in the best position to succeed or do that. Right now, you're pretty much just trying to get the most out of this guy. But the fact of the matter is, Kawhi Leonard is much more closer to maybe a 2 or a 3 option to a basketball team than he is an actual one at this point. Daniel, what's it?
I think it's the health, and you hit the nail on the head right there. With the Clippers, you need a superstar because you are unveiling a new stadium. You need a superstar because you are in LA with LeBron James, Anthony Davis on the exact opposite side. Kawhi Leonard, I still think, and this is my take, when he's healthy, and this is the issue, obviously, the dude is still a top 10 player in the NBA. The issue is he reliable without a guy who's carrying the load for 65 games, 70 games, who's being that guy throughout the regular season, because you need that in order to get the playoffs in the Western Conference. The Western Conference is too damn tough. So Kawhi Leonard is in a tough spot, as are the Clippers. I personally think what they should do now, at some point, you have to have the conversation. You need to bring in another star. And I think that this Kawhi, James Harden, this marriage with the Clippers, Malik, I think it's over. I don't think it's good. I don't think it works. hasn't proven to work. You had your chance in the playoffs this past year. Paul George, Kawhi, both guys were healthy. You went out and you lost to the Mavericks. And in that series, you lost in 5.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't like there was moments, Malik, they dog walked the Mavericks one game and then they fell short. So I think that Kawhi, especially with what he's been saying, I think Kawhi's kind of just checked out. And at this point, man, he's not a guy that you can rely on to be a superstar game in and game out. Kawhi's checked out. And as his team is, Malik, they're not a top 8 team in the West. This team may make the playoffs. And if they make the playoffs, they get in bounds early. The roster sucks, to be honest with you.
Yeah, roster definitely does suck. And, I've got my thoughts long-term on the Clippers outlook. But I want to make sure that we get our guy in here, as, Steve Bradshaw. It would not be a fantasy football day if we don't really talk about it. So without further ado, Steve Bradshaw, TW fantasy football analyst. Steve, how's it going, man?
Pretty good. How about yourself?
Sorry about the fired up show, man. I know we kept you in.
No, I guess
longer than we expected, but hopefully this was a good fantasy football weekend for you. I'll let Daniel take it away.
All right, Steve. So first off, give me your thoughts real quick. Let's discuss Monday Night Football. For anybody that has players such as a Chris Olave, such as a Travis Kelce, what's your thoughts on the matchup, and who do you think has a great/terrible matchup? Then we'll get into your takeaways.
I'm actually liking the matchup a bit. I think the Saints, they started the season really hot, and I think it could be a sneaky high-scoring game. I don't expect really – I like Chris Olave. I think he's in a good spot to have a good game. He had a really nice week last week. I think Kareem Hunt is in a week where the Chiefs are going to have to rely on him with no Rashee Rice. They don't really have many other options. So Kareem Hunt's a guy that I really think is going to have a big game. I think the Chiefs are going to be forced to rely on him because with Patrick Mahomes, the offense is still going to be solid. You're never going to have a terrible offense, for projecting out on most weeks. But I think Kareem Hunt's going to really step up big in this Monday Night Football game.
And we got some people discussing real quick. Go a little more in depth on Hunt. What do you think his usage is today? Right, obviously you got Carson Steele. How good do you think he does? How many touches? And do you think he's the goal line back for the Chiefs?
Yeah, I'm looking at about 15 touches most likely. Yeah. I mean, in his first game, he had 14 carries, 2 receptions. So realistically, I don't really see why it would go down. Carson Steele was a guy that, was a cool story, but he fumbled. The Chiefs staff never really wanted to put him in that position. He was just a nice little grinder. Maybe he'll get a few touches. And Samaje Perine is actually a solid player, but he's nothing more than a scat back. He'll probably get his, 3 to 5 touches, maybe a few receptions as well. But Kareem Hunt's going to be that guy. And again, in a game where they're going to be forced to run the ball even more when you don't have Rashee Rice, it's his second week back with the team. I don't see how he's not going to go up from having 16 touches. And in that Chiefs offense, that is, a fantastic role to have.
Completely. And I'm a huge fan of this game, to be honest. My only concern is I think the Saints got a really good defense, man. And I think that's what we'll discuss this obviously on the betting segment in a little bit. But Patrick Mahomes hasn't looked great so far this year. I think there's a real world where the Saints make life hell on Patrick Mahomes. But let's discuss week 5, right? Give me some of the guys. We'll start out with I'm actually curious some of your negatives. Give me some of the guys that you feel are losers coming out of week 5 that either whether it's injuries or whether it's, they got a different matchup. Who are your biggest losers out of week 5?
Honestly, week 5, I didn't really hate a lot of players, but I will say Aaron Jones, him going down was, really tough. I'd say because the Vikings offense has looked much better than expected this year, right? And Aaron Jones also, you had a bit of a concern if he was still going to be able to produce. At the start of the year, he looked really good, but now you're kind of going down that hill where he's a 29-year-old running back. He's injured already. He's going to have an MRI. I just don't know. I think it might be tough sledding for the rest of the year for Jones, which really sucks because up to that point, I mean, he was scoring 18, 10, 25, 17 points. That's going to be a big letdown for Aaron Jones specific. I think he was a big loser. And Devon Achane as well. He goes down. It's just, injuries there. It's just really tough for him because, You already have the concerns about him being a smaller back. But I will say with A-Chain, I do want to kind of touch on that real quick. It was a concussion, so it's not necessarily, as much to do with his body, as a whole. I don't think it's going to be a super long-term thing. But still, those guys really, really got hurt from injuries this week, and I've questioned about their long-term outlook for the season.
And when you look at, let's discuss some of the guys that had great weeks. So who are some of the guys that, whether you're saying, hey, I need to go out there and I need to trade for this guy. Let's say my team, Steve, is on pace to be 2-3 or 1-4. Who should I be looking to trade for / who am I looking on my team that said, hey, I'm going to rock with this guy for the rest of the season. He's going to be an absolute star.
I think if you can get Drake London at a fair price, I know he just absolutely exploded, but I think that he is going to be a bona fide stud. London has got better every single week, and with Kirk Cousins, Kirk Cousins was just not looking very good to start the year, and that really played a big role into how London looked as well, but he's been improving every single week. Targets have gone up every single week as well. And you finally saw him put it all together for that massive performance. Obviously, he's not necessarily a buy candidate, but if you can offload a guy, for example, say you have Tyreek Hill and you can't afford to wait, go pivot to Drake London because he's honestly, I believe that he has a similar rest of season outlook to Tyreek Hill, even when Tua's back. And for now, he's going to absolutely dominate and win you some weeks, and he could definitely still be a league winner.
No, for sure. I'm definitely with you. I think that this was a huge, and especially since it was prime time, that's my kind of issue, though, is hopefully that people aren't, valuing him too high. We'll get to some of these questions, and then we'll ask for, your kind of final thoughts on Week 5. Let me ask your thoughts on Tank Bigsby. Let's talk about the Jaguars rushing room. ETN, Bigsby, Big B. Are you concerned about ETN's workload? What's your thoughts on the running back situation there?
I'm concerned about ETN. I mean, how could you not? He just hasn't looked good at all. Tank Bigsby is a guy that I'm not necessarily in love with from a fantasy perspective because he's a very good runner, but he's never been a good pass catcher, which, I mean, depending on the format you're in, if we're looking at a PPR league, I think that's going to cap his ceiling a ton. Obviously, he did have the big 25-point performance, but he also did have 2 touchdowns, so that's another thing to keep in mind. If you look at the season, he's had 1 reception for 30 yards on the whole year. Yeah. So, again, I just don't see a world where he's going to be a complete stud. And on top of that, ETN, the coaching regime, you have Doug Peterson. I mean, he's a terrible coach, but he seems like he's committed to Travis Etienne. He literally said in a press conference that, no, they're not going to be changing their starting running back. I mean, the Patriots were fine saying they're going to bench Ramondre Stevenson, so it's not obviously that we saw how that worked as well. Yeah. That was pretty interesting. But I just don't see the ETN. ETN's never going to have lower than 50% of the snaps. It's never going to be less than the committee. So for a guy that doesn't have pass catching upside, I think Tank Bigsby's going to be a fine player. Maybe he can get up to, if they really do decide to go that route, he'll average about 10 to maybe 12 points on a weekly basis, but he's not going to have that massive upside or have a much higher floor than that, which people may expect.
We got 2 quick questions here. One's about your team. First off, Chicago Bears look very good this week. Jared Gundler said, is Roschon Johnson, is he rising? What's your thoughts on your Chicago Bears backfield?
I actually like Roschon Johnson a lot coming out of college, but I will say I don't really know if he's too much of a riser. I mean, the reason he's had fantasy production, to be honest, is he had a touchdown in week 4, had 2 touchdowns in week 5, and that's mainly because of the fact that DeAndre Swift just cannot get into the end zone. He just does not have the vision to see those holes in the goal line. It's just not good. I don't know. I'd say Roschon's a fine stash for the end of your bench. If you absolutely have to plug him in, I don't mind it, throwing him in when the Bears have a high-scoring matchup because it seems like they are trusting him more and more to be the goal line back. I think he's a solid player as well. I mean, he had 10 carries on the week. Yeah. I'd say, yeah, he's a good plug-and-play, but I'd say that's about where it stops. It's touchdowns, which are always volatile, especially for running backs.
And then one last one from our guy, Sean Brennan. He said, is Jordan Whittingham's production sustainable, or should you look somewhere else as soon as possible? Because obviously the news Cooper Kupp is targeting, I believe, week 7 return. What's thoughts on the Rams wide receiver room?
Yeah, Whittington's a guy that I just would ride until Kupp is back. I think you can still play him even when Kupp's back. Once Puka's back, I think that he's probably going to be dust. He's a solid player. I mean, we saw a lot of buzz from him coming out of the preseason, so not really too big of a surprise here. Stafford's still a very good quarterback. The Rams obviously have a fantastic scheme with Sean McVay, so he's a player that I'd be looking to ride up until Cooper Kupp's back. I'd still plug and play him probably as a flex type option, but even then, I definitely lower my expectations once Kupp's back and then once Nakua's back as well.
For sure.
Steve, we appreciate you as always, my man. Appreciate your insight that you always bring, and we're looking forward to having you back on Friday for fantasy. Whoa, potentially a Friday for fantasy football. Friday, because I think that we are only doing our morning shows actually this week, today and tomorrow actually, because we're going to be heading to New York for the Bengals versus Giants game, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of intrigue there, but still we'll find something to collab on as well. But Steve, we appreciate you as always jumping in on the show, talking things through with you. And we should still have a morning thing on Friday. Actually, the more and more I think about it, we should still have something planned. So, man, we're looking forward to it, man.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me.
Of course, man. Congratulations with your Bears, man.
Thank you.
2 wins must feel nice. But make sure you guys give Steve a follow. Steve, appreciate you. We'll see you Friday, my man. If you guys could do us a favor, give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications so you guys don't miss when we go live or when we upload content. Daniel, let's get to some of our favorite bets for tonight's game. I have a few plays that I like. Don't want to give them all away because I do want to save some for the Patreon. I was over here looking. I still believe in my core that the Chiefs can't cover tight ends. That's not a shot. I still believe that. And I think that if you're going to get some value out of some of these matchups tonight, the tight end position is definitely a spot where I'm looking at firmly if I'm trying to make some money. I also think Kareem Hunt is going to emerge in the backfield. We saw him have 2 receptions last week. I think he gets up to 3 this week, and it's sitting at plus money. So Kareem Hunt over 2.5 receptions, plus 116. Jawan Johnson over 1.5 receptions. I like that, sitting at minus 176. And Foster Moreau, sneaky good pick. Foster Moreau over 1.5 receptions, sitting at plus 112. Those are some plays that I absolutely love for this game. Daniel, what plays do you like for the game?
So once again, make sure you guys go subscribe to the Patreon. We've got our full best bets on there. Malik, I've got 2. Patrick Mahomes to throw an interception, Malik. This might be the lock of the week, to be honest with you. And this is something I've been eyeing all week. This is my biggest bet of the week. The Saints have forced 6 interceptions this year. They are arguably the top 3 defense, and they forced 6 interceptions, an interception in every single game. I'm talking Jalen Hurts threw a pick. I'm talking Kirk Cousins threw a pick. Who's a quarterback that's thrown an interception in every single game this year? None other than Kansas City Chiefs quarterback Patrick Mahomes. Without his number 1 wide receiver, Rashee Rice, give me Patrick Mahomes throwing interception at minus 140. And I'm with you. Give me Jawan Johnson's over receiving yards, 12.5. Way too low, especially since the news, I believe, Taysom Hill is going to be out. He was questionable, didn't practice a lot, got hurt in last week's game. I like Jawan Johnson today. I like Patrick Mahomes throwing interception. Those are my 2 plays. And to be honest with you, Malik, 5.5 points for the Saints. I think the Saints could win outright. 5.5 is way too much on prime time. I think the Saints keep this within a touchdown. Give me the Saints plus 5.5 as well.
And if you look up, right above me to my right-hand side, you'll see the TWSN Patreon QR code. Make sure you guys give that a click. Subscribe to the TWSN Patreon. Remember, we're in the business of making you money. We greatly appreciate y'all for tuning in to the Sit Down Morning Show with Malik Wright. We'll be back tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. to discuss the Bengals too a little bit more as we look ahead to the New York Football Giants. We'll be watching it live from our suite in MetLife Stadium this upcoming Sunday night. It's been a rough ride. But a lot of football left to be played, a lot of games to get to. And remember, there's only one way you should be waking up: talking sports, engaging in the conversation, and having that dialogue. And that is the right way. See you tomorrow at 10 a.m., everybody.